of for the public to understand the analysis that the committee spent 6 months and about 18 meetings to going over. And we've tried to do this by section. Tonight we're taking the section that starts with the, well, I'll have it here in a second. It starts with, it happens every night, every time. They must have come forth with this.
Now, I don't want to talk about cause and effect, but last week Mike Russo walked in and the alarms went off. Tonight he walked in and the alarms went off.
That's right.
I don't know, Mike.
We're going to start with, we finished up last week, which is, we're starting with street lighting, and then we'll go through, not too far tonight, but we will go through the, not that page, okay?
Street lighting, street admin on our sheets.
What?
What number is street lighting?
Street lighting, my dear,
Is,
is 85182 and down through service awards,
Is there an extra copy? I can look online, but it just might be easier to see.
which is we're ending at A9015.8. And are we going to do benefits in that tonight, or is that next week?
No, we do benefits next week, okay, and
And
I'm
how-
looking for my other chart. Didn't I have two charts when I came in here? Not
I
this one?
thought you did.
You put one up on the wall.
Yeah, but where's the other one?
Did you leave it in the car?
No, so tell me I brought the wrong one.
You have revenues here. Well, everybody has their charts with them, so.
Okay, all right, well, it's not the,
What number are we starting at? Sorry.
What, starting? We're starting at A5182.
yeah, there are only about 4 items that we're going to,
0.4.
there are only about 4 items we're going to talk about tonight, so.
1 and 0.4. Okay, the 0.4 is basically contractual. Okay, did you get it, Rebecca?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're going through number expenditures.
Lots of zeros in this tonight. Lots of zeros tonight for the.
Oh, yes, we're basically going through until we get to retirement benefits, okay? A9018. Okay? And since I don't seem to have all the big charts tonight, we're going to have to wing it as we go, okay?
Follow our sheets.
I have to put to their sheets and...
Mike has his, Rebecca has hers, I believe,
Yeah.
and Vicki has hers.
Sure, okay? So the first three here, being street light, sidewalk, bus operations, and off-street parking, no change. Absolutely no change. We combined the town and the village actual expenditures, and it indicated there was no change to those items. Now, we start with the next areas, which are recreation administration, parks, Moriello personnel insurance, equipment for Moriello, contractual, the community center, youth programs, services, equipment, and contractual, the library, historian, historic properties, and historic commission. No changes would have been impacted by consolidation of government. The next item was celebrations. And there's a total of 6,845 total cost, and we projected that with one town, one community, the celebration was to be 3,423. The thought was there, I believe, that there seems to be a question in regards to the town and the village, the fight in regards to what support of what.
Are you here for planning board?
Yeah, I believe we're in the right meeting.
Planning board's in
In
it,
the
first
other
of all.
Oh, it's.
Yes.
First of all. Okay? So,
I mean, we'd love to have you stay, but
so there's just a small amount of money that we indicated for that savings. Any questions in regards to that?
Yeah, so what's being saved? Sorry, I missed it with the gentleman that walked in.
Well,
What's being saved here in terms of $34,000?
celebrations is a very strange category for,
Do you know, yeah, can you explain the line all in all?
well, Rebecca probably knows more than I do, but, if you looked at the village budget for this year, the 125th, okay, is a very different thing.
Yeah, right.
Okay, and these for some reason don't get spent. I don't know what the money is for. I used to think part of it was for community events in our park, the gazebo, if you needed electricity and all of that. But apparently, most of the groups that use that pay their own. So, we've not, and then of course there are the fireworks. But the fireworks, in part, at least in the past, has been raised by an independent fireworks committee in the town. The town does put some money in, so I suspect some of this is for the fireworks that they have out at the fairground.
So,
I mean, it's
so
not,
what my mind is it now that the village and board chip in on whatever this is, or that's the intention here in 2011, the village and board would chip in somehow proportionally or something to one event, that now the merged government would have to pay for that same event.
no, that doesn't happen. So I also used to think that in part when we had parades, it was for putting up the, what do we call those things? Yeah, but the horses, but that's not there.
Is that the,
So I've not been able to track it. And do you know, Rebecca?
One part of it that I do know, which may not happen any longer, back when I was on the board, we would have an annual volunteer recognition day, which may not happen anymore.
And that's what I was wondering and that was a joint effort.
Yes.
They'd get coffee mugs or some memento,
Right.
which
right.
they would present to every volunteer on both boards in both, the town and the village.
well, I think in that particular one, since you probably would have fewer people who would be interested rather than all the people in the village and the town, because you have one planning board, one zoning board, that type of situation, that there would be some reduction there in cost. And the rest of that savings, I think there was some feeling that, and I know this from having listened to some of the town board meetings, that the town has at times have been concerned that the village board said, we're going to have this event and we've approved this event and you got to pay for it because it's part of the town. But it's in the village, but it's a town-wide event and you've got to pay for it. That has not I've read some of that stuff in the paper, some of that concern. I don't think it happened necessarily in my terms, but I think it's happened since the times. And I think that the idea here, at least the idea when I looked at this, okay, was that for celebrations, you have one community-wide board who's addressing that and says that if we approve something, we recognize that we have to pay for it. It's much like, on a much smaller scale, the state coming up with mandates and then passing them down to the communities and saying, you gotta fund it, or the school's gotta fund it, or that type of situation, that we all unhappy about. Not quite as bad as small. And the thought was, at least when I looked at this and we were discussing this, that one community board responsible for the entire community would have recognized that when they talk about a community event, celebration, that they also would be responsible for the full cost of that, or the taxpayers would. That's the way I looked at it when they did it.
But for the most part, since I've been involved, it's really money set aside for an entity and not
Right.
used.
Yeah, but these are
It
actions.
did get used, right?
Yeah, but-
Because they ordered it.
Right,
And if it's there, they could spend it.
yeah.
Well,
So-
I have a feeling that it just dropped through lack of interest, because I know when I was on the board, the protocol was that the deputy mayor and the deputy supervisors got together and planned the event, and one of us would arrange for the refreshments, the other would
Right.
arrange for the treat.
Oh yeah, this is for the, yeah.
And I think this is a nice thing to do.
It was,
Yeah.
yeah, but I just have a feeling that somewhere lack of interest, it just fell by the wayside and didn't get, continued. And
I
no
do
one-
know that 2,500 of the town that year went toward the fireworks.
Okay,
Okay. So, but I could also see if somebody who is of significance and made a significant contribution in public life in the community, and the two boards decided they wanted, or the town decided it wanted to create a memorial or plant a tree in memory, you need to have the money to allocate it to do it, so.
Okay.
So, let's see, the 2013 town budget, I can see 2,500 was budgeted. On the same sheet, there's a 2012 actual as of 9/17/12 that says that 4,500 was, I assume, spent. So
This
it
is
seems
90
like this money is being spent somehow.
In the town.
In the town. I'm not looking at the village, but
It could
I
be
find
that
the
there's
same
still,
thing. It seems like there's this figure and the calculation and the assumptions here warrant further looking at. If we were
Okay,
trying
all
to
right.
figure this out, it doesn't seem like there's enough to go on here to understand what's.
Okay, I'd like to move on to the adult education. No change in that. Total cost would have been the same in 2011. Zoning and planning, a reduction of 11,731 and 36,934. Zoning and planning board cost reductions. I had a long discussion with Sally today, and that I don't believe that those costs, I think those costs are, while there may be some, I think they're accentuated because they're supposedly, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sally, they're basically because the thought is that on zoning board and applications and planning board applications, the village works on a situation, on a process that puts the money in escrow and bills are charged against it. The town does not do that. They just receive the funds in and they don't keep them in a specific escrow account for each project and pay out for it. The problem is that if we're going to significantly reduce these, here we should have also reduced the revenues. Sal disagrees with that.
I do.
Okay, all right, so.
And the reason I do is because,
Go ahead and explain that.
if you notice, zoning in the village, okay, is 5,289. Okay, that would cover the engineer, the attorney, and the secretary. All right. In the town, the 16,442 doesn't reflect those same three things, because the engineer and a lot of the engineering costs, okay, come out of the escrow account. In the town, they don't have escrow accounts the way the village does. So if you look at planning, you really see how dramatic a difference there is. In the village, if Rebecca and I wanted to develop a house, some land, okay, we would come in and we would pay a fee to the planning board. It's called an escrow account, and that would cover those expenses that the planning board incurs with an engineer, the attorney, to help us along, to look at our plans, to review our plans. All of that comes out of the money that we paid in. Now, say we were charged $2,000, okay, but our planning wasn't that complicated, and so the expenditures to the attorney and the engineer and whatever within the planning board.
Thank you.
Speaking of planning,
This is gonna be the funniest video.
so say we only spent $1,700. We're done now. Everything's been approved for us. And then what happens is a resolution comes to the village board to close the escrow account. Anything that remains in that escrow account, once it's closed, comes back to us. So there's no taxpayer expenditure in the village except for the planner, the planning board secretary, a small general retainer for the planning board attorney and the zoning board attorney. All of the other expenses are paid by the developer. In the town, it's not done that way at all. And that's why you see such a dramatic difference in those two ways of doing things. Now, I happen to think the village does it the right way, but
Well, did the town switch over to do it that way?
if
Well,
we
they
become
could.
one
More
government,
recently,
Well, one government and the board would have to
oh, will
decide.
they do it now?
isn't the town now using an escrow account? Because I can see in the budget there's.
I think they are moving that way, Mike, but they
But the point that I'm making is if we were going to take any significant out of here, we should take it out of the revenue portion also, if we were looking at 2011.
but I want to double check that because I
Okay,
think
all right. Sally and I disagree about
We
this,
don't agree.
but you know, that's not uncommon, we can disagree. What?
You say it here, but you're therefore not, you can't have it both ways. You can't.
That's what I'm saying.
You're saying that.
yeah.
And
Well, the point is this, okay, you know, when we get through this and get through all this development, okay, you know, we'll have the figures, okay, and there may be committee members that say, yeah, I know, we say the savings are identified, or the reduction in increase in income and reduction in savings is so much, okay, and there may be a report that say, well, there is 50,000, 100,000, maybe more than that, that's in question, okay, but even if we took that out, here would be the savings, okay, and that's planning, how I'm planning to make the final report, okay, because I think I want to take into consideration your input and the other people's input here, okay, and let's, even in almost a worst case scenario, or as I see it as a worst case scenario, the savings to the combined would only be something. Planning board or planning board's there. They would only be that. Okay.
But Mike, to clarify, and this is why Dave and I aren't in agreement. If you look on the revenue side for the town is $136,691. The expenses.
Which line are you on?
I was on revenue in A2115. Okay. The total revenue between the two,
Yeah.
okay, is 140,661. If you look, okay,
Yeah.
and then you look at the town expenditures. The
Yeah.
town expenditures for planning are 211,742. So I disagree. I believe that the savings that you're seeing over on the right are for the secretary, okay, and incidental expenses, which in one government you would only need one secretary for the zoning board.
Only a partial secretary at that point.
And you would need only one secretary for the planning board. Right now.
There's definitely.
So I want to go back and
Well,
check.
Yeah, I think that should get checked, also because you need to look at what the secretary's salary is.
But let's not
And
forget.
consider those,
Yeah.
whatever extra hours it might be,
But because the systems are so different,
right?
until you really got it, and there's no way that you can go back and say, gee whiz, in the town, this should have been escrow and that should have been escrow, because you just can't do it.
So I think the point that the point is legitimate. Okay, that in a consolidated government, one community government, you'd have one planning board with a secretary and possibly the same secretary for the zoning board of appeals. I think if you have one person doing that, or two people versus four today, you number one, your total cost, you can offer a little bit more, but less than two salaries for that job.
Yeah, I mean, I want to remind you of back when we were discussing 2 weeks ago, when we were discussing legal and engineering, and your own point of view in the October
Yes.
meeting, where you said that, let's face it, you're still going to have the same amount of requests for variances and for
Oh, yeah,
developments and all that. So
you don't win all of them, Mike.
You're going to have to meet twice as much to cover the same ground.
Well,
There's-
possibly.
Okay.
Possibly.
I mean, it really depends, Mike, because this year, in the 2 years that I have been on the board, the zoning board of appeals has not had to meet every month. Okay. Next week, there are 2 hearings. Okay, so it's very cyclical. Okay. Planning board activity in the town, I imagine, because of Park Point, which is a very special situation and probably, unique in many ways. They're meeting all the time practically, okay? But the village planning board, some of their meetings have been to work on the new zone and the changing definitions that we all have been working on for the last half year. And so they're using some of that planning board time to review definitions and special use permits. Okay, they're not necessarily meeting to review applications. So sometimes the planning board has been very light, sometimes it's heavy, and you never can predict.
Granted. It's
But
still,
to think that you are going to have to meet, and the other thing that we might say, in one government, we could tighten things up better so that you wouldn't have as much difficulty interpretations, because the zoning board of appeals is obviously to appeal a decision of a variance set. And if your definitions are good, okay, then there's less room for misinterpretation. And so, you know, all of this, you know, is dependent upon the way codes are built and how we build it together in one government. I mean, I think there's definitely going to have to be some tightening up. In terms, Rebecca should agree, you know, some tightening up. And so that'll take some time. I suspect that should we successfully achieve one government, you know, there's going to be that interim period of transition is going to take some real due diligence to make sure everything is synchronized. Okay. So, you know, any good product takes a lot of work. So.
Okay, and we go on environmental control, storm sewers, no change. Refuse and garbage, there's a reduction of $2,000 because the village is no longer paying town fees. And if you remember, there was also the $2,000 on the other end, which was a reduction in revenues because the village was not paying anymore. So you got to have the 2,000 match, okay? And street cleaning, no difference. Other sanitation, no difference. But that is basically the landfill. Shade Tree Commission shows a reduction of $1,000.
No, that's community beautification.
I'm sorry, community beautification. Shade Tree, no change.
so, I have a question on that. Isn't that a matter of you get what you pay for? You don't want to pay, you know, you pay for as much beautification as, I don't see where there's consolidation savings there.
Well,
because-
there is, because right now, the village in our highway department, you know, we keep a line for community beautification, which would be planting the trees that might have died on village property. But we also have a shade tree commission, which the town doesn't have, okay? And together, those two funds sort of, you know, one is a volunteer group,
Yeah.
and for us, that line above shade tree is in DPW. You know, it would be things like mulching for Peace Park,
Right.
any of the planting a
You
new
don't
tree.
That for any less than what you're paying for. You get what you
You
have
won't
to
need
do.
two people doing the same thing, Mike. You know, you're gonna have less, I mean, you're just gonna have, first of all, you're not gonna have to worry about beautifying town hall, hopefully. Okay, which is where the bulk of that. And I won't. I didn't, you laughed, I didn't. Anyway, no, I mean, I see, and we're just talking about 2011. I mean, I see a lot of work. In fact, Vicki is here. Vicki is from our community improvement team, and they're the ones that do the hanging baskets we funded most of the
Is that
funding.
in the community beautification line?
Yep, some of that money is.
Baskets and all?
Wouldn't that be in the village instead of the town? Was that town money, the beautification
See,
area?
the way it used to, we're doing it differently now. But
Well,
in
what would it have been?
2011, CIT money, the Community Improvement Team's money, was in the A fund of the town.
Town, okay.
And so the village said, if it's in the A fund, the village taxpayers are paying for it anyway, and therefore it should all be in that fund. Recently, not in 2011, there was a problem, and there was not the funding for the flower baskets, okay? And it would have meant the community would have been without the flower baskets. The village funded the flower baskets last year, even though it had been funded in the A fund in the town, because it meant it wouldn't be done. And so the village very kindly took over that whole thing. It is now going to be in our village budget for this next year's budget, $3,500 for the baskets and the watering of the baskets. Okay, so you'll see that an increase in the village. In the town, they have taken it out of the A fund and put it in the B fund. Okay, the A fund has, as Rebecca will tell you, has been a fight forever. And that's, unfortunately, they fought over assessments, so the village said, okay, it's gonna be in the A fund, we're not paying for an assessor. And that happened with the ambulance, it's happened with a lot of things, okay? Because the two boards could not come together and
No, it's
have
only
a
one
common
assessor. There's only
understanding.
one assessor in the community, right? There's only one assessor in the community.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Still seems
The
like.
village could have had an assessor.
Oh yes, you could have police judges too.
It seems still to me that in 2011, if you spent $1,000 less, you get $1,000 less of beautification. That's, aside from the, whatever beautification might happen.
Understand what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Understand what you're saying.
Okay.
Okay. Conservation contractual, 10,000 reduction from the total of cost of community at 20,666 down to 10,000. We said a one-time legal expense. Okay, I think the feeling was in the town that if we were working on a joint community, we would have had that contractual operation would have been handled by the attorney that was on retainer, for the most part. No, Sarah?
No, it
No?
was the wetland.
Well, yeah, but it was still going to cost in
litigation.
2011, wouldn't it not have been? Wouldn't it have been a cost in 2011?
That's why why we have it as one.
Yeah, but if we're talking, if we're comparing 2011 to 2011, would it be the same cost?
And we think that should, it's been appealed once,
Pardon?
Hmm?
When it feel,
and it's gonna be appealed again.
I know that, but
So the conservation contractual, I believe, is the wetlands law litigation. And the enforcement, and then the hiring of, what do they call it? The person who goes out and,
wetland delineator or something like that. It's in the
so
B
that's
fund.
what that money is for. But the 10,000 was what we were told was the legal for the wetland law defense.
So then that's not a savings.
Because it is a one-time legal expense, it will not appear again.
No, you couldn't have saved it in 2011, because the merged government, you still would have had to do the litigation for the wetlands. That's, I think,
Not necessarily.
well, Why not?
Why so?
Because there's a
Perhaps with one government, it would have been a more thoughtful and defensible law.
Okay, on,
I don't think, and the other thing is like, that
It would have been a better law if it would have been a better law, but that's not what happened in 2000.
well, and it's not gonna happen again either.
Well, let's hope that's.
It's gonna be
true, but that-
appealed,
but
it's going,
nevertheless,
the town is going
It
to
might not
appeal.
happen regardless of consolidation or not consolidation.
And hopefully,
It's not enough to say we would have done it better because we would have been
No.
merged.
you don't have wetland law litigation every year. Okay? You do have what is that person called, Rebecca?
It's,
The enforcer, but,
wetland delineator.
hmm?
Wetland
yes,
delineator.
it's,
And do they even still they do still have him, right? Her,
Yeah.
him,
I believe so.
yes.
so.
Okay, let's move on to the last item of the evening. That is a question, okay? And this is the reduction in the retirement costs in a joint government.
Now, he's gonna ask about cemeteries, and I have to explain it.
What about cemeteries? Does it even have change in cemetery? I didn't think he had to change the
Question about
cemeteries.
cemeteries, Mike. The town has to maintain, by law,
Cemetery.
cemeteries.
Cemetery?
Yeah.
Oh.
Not
There are cemeteries, there are about a half a dozen, or maybe more.
eight,
Eight? There are 8 cemeteries.
Historical cemeteries, those little.
Physically cemeteries, okay? The largest one is if you go on South Putt Corners Road, and it's right next to where the Frito-Lay place is, down about 100 yards up, okay, on the east-hand side, okay? If you go up, I'll tell you where another one you can see, if you go towards Mountain Rest Road, and you go just beyond the crossroad Butterville, believe it or not, there's a cemetery on both sides of the road. Not very big, okay? I mean, it's got a few stones in it, but there's one of them. There's one of them in Plutarch that is very difficult to find. Last I knew, but Eric, if you really want to know about those cemeteries, Eric Roth wrote a little book that's available, I think, in the library about it. So that, okay, now.
And all of these cemeteries have been abandoned over time.
Yeah,
They were family cemeteries.
yes, right.
But
The one down, out off of Rod and Gun Club Road, I think there's a little one there, since I live near there. If you go down the Rod and Gun Club Road and turn right before the gate to get into the...
In the Rod and Gun Club or whatever?
Into the club, there's this...
Yeah, there may be one down there, yeah.
And there's a lot of Hasbroucks and Lefevres.
anyway, the town, by law, must maintain.
And there's one of them up on 32. After you go past the road into the landfill, it's about another quarter of a mile, and there's kind of like a house in the field there, okay? Well, there's a road that goes down in there, and if you go down there in the back about a quarter of a mile, there's one down there too.
And if you come out the ShopRite exit, and the foliage is gone, and look straight ahead, you'll see.
That's the biggest one in North Preston.
Yeah.
So that was the most interesting line we've talked about.
Okay, all right. Well, I think this one really, the next one is probably, and really this kind of is going to kind of cover in analysis a lot of the other costs that we're talking about for the balance of them. And this is the question, the retirement for employees. And what I did, and I apologize for the artistic presentation. I'm not an artist. I never have been. I never will be. However, you have to work with what you got. Okay?
You want to lie down?
Yeah, we might as well put that down. We got lots of tape here. This is the retirement cost per employee, and it's an approximate average because retirement cost is how much they earn. So if you've got a person that earns $30,000, the retirement you pay is much less than you pay one for 45, and if you have one that's pays $60,000, then you would pay much more retirement. However, taking a look at what the village has had, the town is very difficult to figure, but the village has basically a very stable workforce in regards to the number of employees. And in 2011, they had about 21 equivalent employees. That includes the board members, the mayor, his secretary of the staff, the highway, and so forth. About 21 equivalent employees. The cost of that, and by the way, the cost, if you go back and look at the cost that's stated here, says it is $88,000, but I added the other $11,000 that is in the water and the sewer accounts. It comes up to about $47.60 per employee. Average employee, roughly, okay? 2012, we know that is now, that rate went to $6,900 per employee. In 2013, the figures we've gotten, it's gone to 8,600 employees. And Sally, read off what the village cost has been for that they've had to pay for retirement payments into the state, starting with 2009, which goes, is it 2009 or 2010?
I started 2009,
Okay, so
and I go all the way through 2012. Our payroll, our total payroll in 2009 was $880, $819, $96. Mike, I can give this to you, and I can print out another one for myself when I get home, so don't, okay. New York retirement for that salary group was $66,485. While, now let's go that way. Jumping to 2012, okay, our total salaries only increased 4.35%, okay, to $119,000. I'm going to round. New York State retirement jumped 175% to $116,267. That's from $66,000 in 2009 to $116,000. Okay, our medical and dental expenses for that 4-year period increased by 5%. You hear everybody saying, okay, how health and it has increased, but not anywhere near what workman's comp has increased. That has literally gone up 115% from $45,000 to $97,251. I mean, it's just incredible. And that's what Kitty was talking about early on when she said, well, you have to really understand, you know, these figures are really going to get higher, and just, you can see it. And so we've gone from a total payroll, New York retirement, medical, dental, workman's comp. The total for 2009 was $1,311,492. Now, without increasing the number of employees, I think we have one more. Okay, in 2012. 1,533,730. Okay, now even taking out, because this is total. Some of this we can attribute to water and sewer because obviously employees work on water and sewer. But just say 15% we could take out. Our whole total general operating budget for the village is $2,035,000. This is almost half. It's 49% of our general operating budget is basically New York State retirement, medical, and workman's comp. And if you remember, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, the New York State pension fund
Yes.
took a big.
Well, that's what I think is related to this huge
That's
leap of the
what I wanted
retirement.
to say.
Yes. Right.
Instead of New York State saying, okay, we're going to figure out a way to reimburse
Right.
the pension fund that we fouled up, they're saying to all of our local property owner taxpayers, you
Make
fix
up the
it.
difference.
That's how they figured it out. Well, the point that I'm trying to make, okay, and I think that this, hopefully it doesn't continue at this wild issue, but it has been, and I think it will. Once again, I point out to the 5 to 8% attrition, and we projected, and we've gone through this proposal, we talked about 9 people. 1 supervisor, supervising secretary, 1.5 people in the clerk, personnel, and finance operation, building inspector -1, and the highways, which we haven't seen yet, but I think it's 4, maybe more than that, I'm not sure, okay, we won't know that until they put out 4. And basically, elected board members, and I put down as an equivalent of half a person. If you add all their salaries together, their salaries come up to about a half a salary of a full-time employee. So that's 9. If you take 9 times 4760, you get 42,840, and we reduced it when we did this thing on a good guess. We reduced it by 42,000. 42,000. So we're in the ballpark. And the point that I want to try to make, okay, is that once again to 11. And if you extrapolate that down, okay, 2013 would have made a difference of $77,410. Now, why this is important, and very important, because we are going to talk about, next week, we're going to talk about Social Security payments. We're going to talk about medical payments. We're going to talk about all of those additional benefit items that we're talking about, and they all are going to have, this approximately 8% reduction of cost if we had been consolidated in 2011. Okay? Have a question about this, Mike? Yeah.
Well, I'm still looking at, can't quite see all, yeah.
Come here.
I'm good here.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Come on up, take a look at it, yeah. I mean, there's 2 aspects, okay? It's aspects of what would have been the situation in 2011, and what would have been what the future's impact is, or going to be, and if we had consolidation, the impact of that is a continuing saving aspect.
What's the last elected board member, is that what that is?
Equivalent, 0.5.
Point.
And
Fine.
I don't understand how we could eliminate an entire building inspector.
Well, we went through that, you were not here, okay?
No, I wasn't.
We had the town, basically The operation in the village is 3 people. The operation in the town is 3.5 people. Okay, so 1.5 clerks, code enforcer, and a building inspector. We went back through that operation, okay, and we're talking about now the town, and Jason didn't agree with this, etc. But the town, the village on their own had, at the 2011, they had 2 building inspectors. They had 2 building inspectors. In 2012, I think it's in 2012, yes, it was in 2012, they said we only need 1 building inspector. And they put the other building inspector and made him a planner, all right?
The position of a plan.
Yeah, they changed what the position is, all right? Now, in my mind, essentially that basically says in 2011 you didn't need the building. Maybe you need to have a planner, and that's the question. The town, okay.
There's no planner.
But the town, okay, basically has a 1 building inspector person today. They didn't have it in 2011. They had a half a person as a code enforcement, and they had a half a person as a planner, I guess, to support that. And they had about 2 clerks, okay, or 2.5 clerks or something like that, about that, okay. The thought in the process was that if you combine the clerk operation, okay, you end up, we said that when you eventually went to 2015 or whenever you made a budget, okay, you'd have to put half of that planner back in, okay. All right, so basically they'd just be a reduction of 1 person there. But we figured that you could combine those operations together, and with clerk functions and building inspectors and code enforcement and planning support, that you could operate with fewer personnel. That was the evaluation.
And Rebecca, don't forget that in the village, I better not say this too loud. In the village, Rebecca,
You
we
say
do a
it
lot more
out.
inspecting because we have
Exactly.
a lot more rentals.
Right, yeah,
Okay, than the town.
it's dead, yeah, we're very dense.
Yep. So that's why keep the planner independent. You're gonna need 2. Okay, probably 1 clerk. You don't need 2 code enforcement. Our code enforcement person is also the clerk for the building department. They have
Okay.
excess.
Well, but part of this doesn't sound like it's consolidation related. It sounds like an efficiency.
I consider consolidation efficiency.
Yes, but it's
You
not.
don't. That's one of our, I think one of our basic differences.
Probably because I say when we get down to the savings line, I read that, and this could be a basic. I read that as that's savings due to consolidation, not savings due, and exclusive of other ways that you can gain it if the town and village continue to operate separately.
Mike, there's something,
not
and I
like you
think,
achieve-
I think the perfect situation, okay, and it's, let's talk about this area here, but it also goes in financial, and it goes with the rest of the operations, okay? There are so many positions that in the village especially, but also in the town, where they got 1 skilled person to do it. And a building inspector, so you got 1 building inspector in the village. You really only have 1 building inspector in the town. I mean, they have to be licensed and all that type of situation. What do you do, okay, when that guy goes on vacation or goes ill, all right? Okay? Now, the point is that just the ability to have that people skill backup, okay? I remember the first presentation we made, and there was a person very emphatically from the village, and very said, you know, I'm only the person that only knows how to run the plant down here in the sewer plant. What do you mean you're going to cut people, okay? Well, that's a terrible situation. It's a very critical situation. Because if you add the town and the village operations together, expected, okay, that you would have another person trained, okay, and knowledge, so when that person can take a vacation or is ill. I mean, if something was to happen today, and I won't speak to the village, but I'll speak to the town, okay, because I see that operation. There's some key people in operations in the town, okay, that if they suddenly became sick, the whole operation would stop. You know, and if you walk to the town hall and you know what a little bit thing, now that's a terrible situation to be. If you combine the clerk personnel financial, you'd have, between the town and the village, a nucleus that so it cover during vacation, cover when a person's ill, okay, and handle those six emergencies, all right? So the question is not only the questions of savings, and that's part of that is savings, because in some cases you have an extra people just in case I got a problem comes up, okay? And that's part of the.
No, I'm familiar with.
Yeah, you understand what I'm saying.
The accordion effect.
But it's a skill set. It's a skill set.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
and it's very critical. It's very critical. Okay, and
it's,
all right.
Yeah, it's not a hard numbers thing. It's a kind of a.
Yeah, that's right.
It's
Okay.
a process.
I mean,
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And do you see, I've never been quite sure. Do you prefer town government to a village government? Because you do understand a town form of government in New York State is what is called decentralized, okay? And a village form of government is unitary. And they're very philosophically quite different, okay? Because in a unitary form of government, there's accountability all the way down, okay? So the mayor is in charge, if you will, and there are department heads, okay? So it all goes from the top down on an organizational chart.
Yeah.
If you look at an organizational chart for a town form of government, I'm not talking about our particular town, it could be any town in New York State. You don't have that kind of centralized
Responsibility.
counts and
You mean
also
you
checks
have
and
the difference
balances.
because of the nature of many elected officials. They each have responsibilities
Right.
for their.
So we can say the highway superintendent in a town form of government, sure, the town board votes on the budget. But in many senses, his people don't work. There's no one accountable going up, okay? Same thing for the
But
clerk.
the town board gets all the personnel problems. I'll just tell you that.
Anyway, you can speak later. I happen to think, I personally believe, that a village form of government is a more accountable form of government to the people it serves. Because, and this was one of the reasons the Efficiency Committee recommended a village form of government, there is a separation of church and state, if you will. The mayor is the chief budget officer, but the treasurer is the chief fiscal officer. Very good checks and balances. In a town form of government, the supervisor is both the fiscal officer and the treasurer. So the budget officer and the fiscal officer are within the same entity in a town form of government. In a village form of government, that's not so. And you have the kinds of checks and balances which I believe are always a good thing to have. So there is a different philosophy if you believe in a town form of government. And what a lot of people don't understand, and I think this may be our assuming that people understood the difference. This photograph, if you will, is a photograph if we were a town, we were a village form of government in 2011.
And you tell me how much you think that's significant in terms of, you know, the performance of these lines and the savings that you kind of you estimated here.
Well, I could say this, and I you know, I speak for the town government, okay? And tell you to say that. And I sit for you know, I've been in the community, involved in the community for, I don't know, 50 years, more, 60. Take the situation of some of the elected officials, such as highway superintendent. We've had some very excellent highway superintendents in the town. I think we have a good one now. We've had ones that were average, and we've had some that were not so good, right? We have had ones that were completely dedicated, that were out there in that office every day, 8 hours a day or more. And we've had highway superintendents that maybe showed up in the morning, went off and did something else, and they might be back the rest of the day. They were not hands-on highway superintendents. Being a town operation, okay, there is nothing the town board can do about that. Okay?
Well, there's a political.
Political thing. It's got to wait 2 years.
But it's also, it's not just political, Mike. It's also by design decentralized.
Right, but you know,
so there's not the accountability.
What I would say though is that you have your official structure, and then you have an unofficial structure. If someone's ensconced, even if they're an appointed position, if they're ensconced and then they have the seat of information, it's often very hard for the person who gets elected into the office to do without that person and say, I'm going to let that person go because they hear a lot of chatter maybe, but it takes quite a bit to get your ducks lined up to get that person.
That's true. That's question. No question about that. You know, we've been in management for years. Okay, no question about that. But the other way, you have no chance in the election, next election. Okay. All right, and thank you very much. I hope that
I do want to make a statement though, because I found it very disconcerting. Last week, I mean, we always review what we've done. Last week, the statement was made by the mayor that if we consolidated, taxes would double in the village. I have seen no numbers presented. I have seen nothing to justify that statement. And if you were, and I'm sure you were, Mike, at the meeting that I was not because I was playing with my grandchildren, when Jerry Benjamin and Peter Fairweather presented, the worst case scenario, the very worst case scenario right now, forget this at the moment, is it will be zero for everybody. That's the worst case scenario.
Well, that's Mr. Fairweather's statement.
But
there's some considerations there that have to be weighed in that he isn't weighing in.
Well, when we did the study, we didn't have the $1 million. Okay, when don't forget,
Right. Well,
the efficiency
the $1
committee,
million is certainly something that isn't in there. As well, that's not in there is a potential, certain
Employee
potential
savings.
grants.
Employee savings. That's not in Fairweather stuff.
It's not, but what he says is there's two ways to get to a kind of fiscal.
you're talking about the whole
neutrality,
big
yeah.
cookbook, the
And-
Fairweather report.
Yes.
Okay.
And he outlines the two scenarios. And the third scenario you could say is because that was prior to the $1 million thing. So he at the meeting 2 weeks ago, you could say that was another scenario he was presenting. But the two scenarios were, one was promulgated on saving 5% off expenditures or
In order
from
to take
the
it-
total tax levy. I think that's how he put it. Either you save 5% and you use scenario 1, which involved a lot of what we now, I think, are going to call improvement districts, benefit assessment, whatever.
Good. I'm proud of you. You got that.
Or scenario 2, which is 10% off of the tax levy, and all you have is water and sewer. You don't have those other
Special districts.
special districts. And he lists them all.
Yeah, but the point
out
is
there.
this, okay, and I know a little bit about that, but there was no consideration of there that as this committee came up with and realized what we could consolidate utilizing facilities here, okay, and utilizing some additional facilities for highway out at the highway department, that we no longer need town hall. Now, one of the problems that this community really is going to have to face if they don't vote for consolidation. The town hall has reached the end of its useful life, or very close to the end of its useful life, in regards to health issues, in regards to
Doesn't meet OSHA standards.
OSHA standards. It's tremendous amount there. So this community, okay, is going to have to face, and there was discussion of it a year ago, about maybe we should move the town hall operation somewhere else. I don't know where, don't know how much time we have a problem trying to police place, of course, but place for the police. But the point is this, that there has to be some look in the future as to how the best to the community. And I would hope, okay, that if we move forward to consolidation, that there is and the community approves the consolidation, recognizes things, that we look at the situation as how long-term, 15, 20, 30, 40 years. I'm not going to be here. It won't make any difference to me. But the community look at what is the best way to house a community government. Meeting next Tuesday. I hope everybody here. We
I won't be.
You will be. We're going to have
I have
a
a CPA.
presentation, I hope, by Chris Marks and Susan in regards to the savings and the discussion of the highway savings, and we will go back through this particular situation, and basically the same percentage was taken off the rest of the figures, okay? Running, the percent-wise, okay? The percent-wise, the different figures, different dollars, different things, but basically, that's the way. And maybe some of them are a little bit high, some are lower. I'll try to do a reassessment for next week. Thank you very much.
But, yeah, we're done.
Now, next meeting,